Welcome to White Women Wake Up. I'm Jonelle.
And I'm Karen.
Together we're diving into real, unfiltered conversations about what it means to wake up as white women in a world shaped by bias, privilege, and our inherited patterns. We're here to challenge norms, unpack our privilege, and foster empathy through raw intergenerational dialogue. It's not always easy, and we don't always agree, but we show up anyways. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Jonelle. Hey, I want to do a quick shout out. Oh, gosh, my hair's kind of funny. I want to do a quick shout out for Pride Month.
Oh, I love that. We're a little late. These are...
you know what? One of the things that I love...
It's like the end of Pride Month.
I know, but one of the thing I love about the idea of Pride Month is the celebrations of Pride are really important because queer people had to hide for so many centuries because of legal reasons, because of so many other reasons. And so the first early Pride parades were really this empowering place for people to come out and say, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And I think celebrating who you are is such an exciting thing. So anyways, yay. Yeah, I want to make sure that we don't miss that.
Yes.
Can I do one other shout out that really concerns me? And I think, so I don't know if you know that Dr. Carla Hayden, the head of the Library of Congress, was let go. She's a Black woman.
I did hear about that.
And I just, amidst all the other things, and God only knows when we air this, what's going to be happening in our world and at that time, but I think we all need to be really concerned with that particular layoff. To have a Black woman who is heading our nation's library, even though it's a research library, and then have her laid off, and then also have her called out for DEI, which is ridiculous, is so scary because I need to learn my histories. I need to know that the stories that I have been told over hundreds of years and all the histories were shaped through a white lens.
Yeah.
And then a white male lens. And now I am really opening my eyes up to a fuller lens that is that has a lot of Black histories in it or Indigenous persons in it. And I'm really scared to lose that. Yeah.
Well, and it's context we all need because like anything in life,
learn.
I think the thing that's interesting is like that most people don't, or most of our populated political country doesn't look at, like, when they get so offended about changing history is fascinating to me because, like, you wouldn't buy a car today or buy a projector or buy without getting so much context and research of different perspectives.
Yeah.
So why don't we want that about our history? Why don't we want that about things that are shaping our current life?
Yes.
Is just different contextual pieces to understand the full piece.
And it's interesting because as we learn, it's so fascinating, Jonelle, that you should say that, but as we learn, it is hard to hear what my inherited culture did with colonization, with Indigenous persons, how my ancestors didn't live out treaties, all of this stuff. But it was fascinating. Last week, when you were talking about this sense of connecting within friendships, those learned behaviors are affecting me today.
Totally.
That I don't realize I'm not shedding that idea of shame and guilt, and I'm bringing it into my everyday language. So anyways, and it was really cute. I want to say one more thing about Dr. Carla Hayden. One of the things that she talked about why she became a librarian is when she was a young girl, I forgot the name of the book. I'm so bad at this. She actually, she saw a book with her, with a young Black girl in it. And it just changed the trajectory of her life. And so why, I don't know. We just gotta open up. We gotta, white women, we gotta wake up. We gotta wake up. We can do it. We can face the hard stuff and we can do it, but we can go beyond this.
The fear that so many people have just break my heart. The fear of taking away their white culture in supporting others is just it breaks my heart. But anyways, this is not a new
and it's not their white
subject.
culture, it's my white
White culture.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
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 But I just
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Point is representation matters.
Okay, representation matters. Okay, so I want to do a shout out to Dr. Carla Hayden. Okay, reflection. What did you do this week?
Did you reflect on it?
Well, it was your topic. What did you reflect on?
No, so to remind listeners, we're reflecting on kind of toxic patterns in friendships. So like where are we complicit with
and how they affect our connections. I think that's a really
but also
big
like
thing.
where are we complicit? Because I think everyone can have a piece of this. And I think it's interesting. I know in the past, and I still with some people in my life, mostly around like family groups, I would say, is talking behind people's back, like frustrated about like their thoughts or their intentions or like why are they doing this is definitely something I still have a pattern of doing. And I don't know why I do it because I do know with other groups of mine, I have been very hurt by gossiping or I've had friendships in the past that were very moody and you had talked about this before with friends of yours that might have all sisters and how there's this tendency sometimes to like always want to be annoyed with one friend kind of thing.
One sister.
Or one
sibling.
sister. And so then they reflect that on like friendships and they're always annoyed with one friend in the group kind of thing and how that breeds some gossip and toxicity. And so that's definitely been something painful for me in the past. And so, but I do know I'm still complicit in some of my gossiping around, larger group structures of, again, usually like family, close family friends, people who are really, I look at as like cousins and family and they do something and it's like, oh my God, did you hear what so-and-so did? Ugh. So that's a pattern I'm still working on.
Yeah. And it's funny because it goes back to our scarcity mindset, right?
Yeah.
Generosity is saying, I'm going to love them and I'm going to try to look at who they are differently, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I think.
Wait, you're going to laugh because I went completely the opposite. I think because I've been doing, so for our listeners, because I want to be authentic, when I recommend a book, which I'm recommending a book weekly.
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
I'm trying to read each.
It's amazing.
It's a lot of work. And so like my friends, I'm sure, everything is about diversity and racism and anti-racist work. But anyways, I think I went a little bit differently because I'm really been centered on this colonial mindset and how it's affected me and how I've been living it out for so long.
Yeah.
And I think last week, what was really good about our conversation last week that really helped me this past week is this idea that, well, of course, my ancestors did all these horrible things, which in many ways they did. I can't even believe some of the things I've learned and read this week that I walked alongside or white people did that I'm going to own that were part of my histories, that no wonder I act out the way I act out.
Yeah.
So I've tried to actually given myself a little grace, like be like, okay, you're learning past behaviors, you're learning inherited behaviors. Now it's time to relearn.
Yeah.
Now it's time to relearn new behaviors. If you make mistakes, if you do this, it's okay. It's okay. These are centuries of shameful behaviors, things like
good.
that. Yeah.
I'm glad
So that's kind of what I did this week. I tried to at least.
You brought up another reflection that I just thought about based on your.
Yeah.
I think I have a tendency, especially on this journey, of I have been in such a growth mindset mode for a long time that I want everyone else around me to be on that same growth mind mode that I think sometimes I do come across a little pushy or a little and like a friend the other day who is definitely very progressive, who is, like very on the up and up with human rights mentioned going to Target. And I just said, oh, are we still shopping at Target? Like, I didn't know we were still doing that. And it's just, and I felt bad later because that's such a
Yeah.
shameful thing to say. And of course, she like kind of backtracked and was like making excuses of why. And the reality is like, no, this is my burden to bear. I have said that this is a stance that I'm going to stake, and I don't need to put this on everyone else, kind of thing. And I think I kind of did it out of like, again, I'm
Yeah.
annoyed. It's summertime. I want to get cute little Target things, and it's
Yeah.
still so mad at that company. But yeah, that is definitely something I think sometimes in friendship, I push people past their level of where they're at with growth, and that's not always helpful
Yeah.
either. It
Yeah.
it brings shame into a friendship, and
Yeah,
that's
we don't
not,
want that.
and no, and that's not my intention. So
Yeah, shout out to Target. That's been so far the largest Black boycott. Yay! That's what they're calling it, the
yeah,
largest Black boycott in history.
they're calling it the largest black, but why can't it just
Because
be the boycott?
no, don't
Why do we
because
have to name things?
no, that's what they're calling it because so many they say that the average 12 million Black people buy from Target daily and $12 million worth of goods. And so many Blacks have stood up. We're
Yeah.
empowering Black people.
Okay.
That's
Well,
why
I
they're
know
calling it.
it, but it's interesting.
I know.
I'm
You're walking alongside it.
I know. No, no, that's not what I mean. I'm in this space of why this is, I've been really reflecting on this lately. This is a side note, sorry, but you thought of why when it's not white and men, we have to give it an adjective. We have to name it. So, like, for example, I'm watching like the new season of Wrexham and all of that because I like the football thing, and they're bringing on a girls' football team.
Oh,
But why is it the girls' football team? Like,
instead of the boys' football team.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why is it always
Yeah.
referencing, like,
Well,
why?
this is the normalization. Actually,
This is what I'm
Janelle,
saying. So I guess I'm just
yeah.
getting sensitive to some of these, like,
Yeah.
are we, like, I get how in a lot of people's mind, we're empowering the Blackness around this being a Black boycott, but also in other people's minds, are we devaluing in it that it's just a Black boycott?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not the biggest
But
boycott,
isn't it
biggest retail
interesting?
boycott.
We don't call our government is a white government. We
Yeah.
don't say that, but look at 90% of the government put people in our power.
But I'm on
Yeah.
this like thing of like, why do we have to call it like women's basketball? You would never
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
I'm going to a men's basketball
Yeah.
game, or okay, like it's.
Well, you're hitting on one. Okay, so the
Anyways,
good news is
that's a derailment of put something on my
that's
mind.
not really a derailment because this is what I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
We talked a little bit about triggering, but okay, so let me tell you where this started from.
Yeah.
What we got feedback. We need feedback from you all. And so one of our listeners, who's a loyal listener, thank you, this listener, they will know who they are. They wanted to know how culture shapes our trauma or if culture has different trauma or like we're traumatized differently based on our culture. And I started doing some research on this. And one of the things that I kind of got into was this language of triggering. Obviously, we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Are we triggered or are we traumatized? And how does culture shape what hurts us? So one thing I wanted to ask you is, first of all, can you think of a moment in your life where you felt a situation was overblown?
I mean,
I know it's a loaded question. So
I can. Do we want to bring up the one? This is a sensitive topic in our friend group.
Okay, I can talk about one that's
Do you want to talk about one that?
Okay, so recently I had a parking issue with a neighbor.
Okay.
And
this is a great one.
And this neighbor came at me really directly, came at me accusatory and attacking. And
for context, this is over a public parking space. Anyone can park there.
So, in fact, we may have talked about this once on the issue, but I've been thinking about it because it triggered me. It triggered me in a way that brought me to discomfort. Maybe it traumatized me, not major trauma, but it traumatized me. And I've been thinking about this in this lens of culture. And so one of the things that I know this neighbor, it's a white woman, and this neighbor, probably from my own projection, probably doesn't have learned patterns of how to dialogue directly
Yeah.
without attack. And so it triggered me. And so what I want to talk about is, so let me frame this.
Yeah.
Let me frame it a little bit. When we when we travel
Yeah.
and we go to a different country,
Yeah.
we spend a lot of time learning about the people in that country.
Yeah.
Learning you and I do, not everyone does, but we do. Learning about some of their behaviors, some of their patterns. Like we
Yeah.
were just laughing. We were traveled and people always do rolling stop signs. And
Oh.
so then we were like, oh, that's a stop sign. Anyways, but I think, especially when you and I travel together, we're trying to really respect the culture.
Yes.
Okay. And the cultural norms. I don't think we do that with one another.
Oh, totally.
And I think as America gets much more diverse,
Yeah.
of course, we're not going to know what triggers us.
Yeah.
Of course, we're not going to know because everybody handles trauma,
Yeah.
anger, frustration differently.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
No,
talk to me
okay.
about what you're thinking
Yeah.
about this. So,
No,
I
so
want
I am
to take it through this lens of, because one person said something like, well, when we conform, we can get along. And conformity is sometimes a negative word. But then he explained conformity in relationship to understanding the culture.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, I get that. That's a level of respect.
But I don't know
So
if
anyways,
conformity is the right
I
word
know.
in
I
that
don't think
sense.
it's the right word either, but
Respect
I think getting to know each other instead of jumping immediately.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
So this does kind of go back to last week's episode around
Yeah.
friendship, and we didn't talk about it, but like a baseline of friendship is really like not centering yourself. It's a baseline of any relationship, not centering yourself and thinking from others' perspective. So I actually have two scenarios, one that happened recently, one that happened a while back, that are pretty, in my mind, blown out of proportion, and I still reflect on. And so one is a situation that is very well known in our friend group, and not to beat a dead horse around it, but I threw Karen, my mom, a 60th birthday party during a little bit after the pandemic, but enough during the pandemic that people were doing outside events, masking of that sort. And so because of that, I in my mind only did local people, and I only invited local people. And there were other contextual things happening in my life. I had a new puppy. I was really stressed with work. So like I had a lot.
Grandma was very
sick. My other dog had just passed my best friend through college, my puppy, my baby had just passed. So there was a lot of stressors that happening in my life. And so and taking on this party and really wanting to celebrate you, I didn't take the time to over-explain to everyone that I'm only inviting local people. And unfortunately, a situation blew up with a family friend of ours that have now resulted in this person no longer being our friend. And so it got very blown out of proportion. And I think why this so much was triggering to me. And I did let them know it was never my intention to exclude you. Like it was, all of that kind of stuff. But there was a lot of centering one's perspective in that and not. And I think like where that was very traumatizing to me is I have been the center of not being invited to places many times in my lifetime. So I have so much compassion and empathy for that. It would have never been my intention to hurt someone like that. And so in one sense that was triggering, but I think in the other sense too, because I come off as so confident, I often get villainized in these situations that I don't nimble myself down and fall prey to being like the white women tears kind of thing. And so that's another trauma effect for me because I am so empathetic. So then for people to look at me as this villainized person really is traumatizing, and not ever thinking from my perspective of what is going on in my life that I might, or even to be able to sit down and have this conversation around it. Now, another thing happened recently with a friend group is kind of a similar situation. There's a friend group that I've known since high school, and none of them, two of them were core friends of mine. Not like we're all friends from friends, but we've known each other for years. And this group in particular, when we make plans, the way we make plans brings so much anxiety to me. There's no alignment. And I've also, ever since the pandemic, two of them have become moms. I don't feel like a lot of reciprocity within these friendships. And so earlier this year, I made a comment about a very loving comment. And now people can argue it should have been said over the phone, not over text. But
Well, that's yeah.
which is fair, but it was said in the moments of this heated stress of, I love all of you individually, but this group brings me a lot of stress. Please do not prioritize me for group gatherings, kind of thing. And again, really emphasize their friendship meant a lot to me individually. And so, because I really wanted them to know this was not about an individual, is about the group dynamics as a whole were not serving me. And this had also been a group in the past who had done there's four of us, but then three of them would do something and leave one
Yeah.
person out. And
Yeah.
sometimes it was me, sometimes it was someone else. And I'm just not down with that. Anyways, one person in this group in particular took this incredibly offensive. And I see from her perspective where she's hurt and where she's coming from. But it really and triggered me. And she said some really nasty words to me. And it was so hard because, again, we're centering ourselves in the trauma. And I'm sure she was coming from a trauma place, but she's not taking the time. And I even said over and over again, I hear you, I see you. Anyway, so all of
Anyways,
this, I know I'm going on.
I know. I think that that's one of the things that I'm hearing from you, which is really interesting, is that language of taking the time.
Yeah.
And so I liked what this particular speaker was talking about when they were talking about triggering and trauma. Yes, first of all, we need to understand that every culture responds differently to trauma.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. If we just start unpacking our whiteness
Yeah.
in America, it's different than whiteness
Well,
in other countries.
And
And we have a lot of trauma. We have certain issues, but Black people have years and years of trauma.
But
so their reaction, okay, you
Wait,
want to
can
finish?
I just want to
Yeah.
finish the loop there.
Oh, sorry.
My point around all of this, though, is, and kind of like you said, taking
Yeah.
the time, is I just wish we would center ourselves less
Yeah.
in our experience and think about the others, or take time to question, like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I even did those in both of these situations, trying to gather an equal
Yeah.
ground there, and there was no equal ground to come to my side. And it's hard and it's hurtful because then there's nowhere to grow.
But this is what I like what you're saying. So I liked the metaphor that this person used about getting to know a culture when you travel.
Yeah.
You take the time, you take the space, and what they meant by conform is you work within their patterns. Okay. So it doesn't mean that you lose yourself. It means that you center, perhaps, like you said, stop centering ourselves and listen to the other person. We're all going to come from places of difference. You might, one culture, like I have a friend, their partner, they and their partner are very animated and very like like you couldn't put them with perhaps a Swedish family that deals very quietly with their confrontations, right? It would be very different. So this idea of getting to know each other is really important. And I think it's even more important now in the landscape of our country that we're becoming more and more diverse. So instead of using language like make America great again, let's go back to who we will never have a homogenous society ever again.
Well, and to be fair, we never had a homogenous society. It was
one.
just,
Yes.
it was a awful,
Yes.
like, time for,
Yes.
anyone. Yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
No.
Yes, if you even go, yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you, Jonelle. And so this idea of, yes, we're going to get triggered. Yes, you can't
Yeah.
help it. I never told you this. When you were a young girl, when you were a baby, we didn't have a lot of monies, but we ran in circles with people who did have money. And back then the popular stroller was an Aprica
Oh.
stroller. And every time I would see an Aprica stroller, I'd be triggered that I'm don't have money.
Well,
So
and
isn't
that's
it
the
silly?
comparison trap.
So you can't help being triggered.
Well, it's so interesting you
Yeah.
said that comparison trap being triggered. I literally had this conversation with friends of mine the other day who are all like married with kids.
Yeah.
I'm struggling for
Yeah.
connection. I'm
Yeah.
struggling for a partner. Like this is where I'm struggling. It was interesting. Theirs are finances because they're struggling to compete with their other friends who have bigger houses and bigger
Yeah,
boats
exactly.
and stuff. And they were so impressed with my ability to like
To
not have a
to live a
scarcity mind,
simple life.
to live a simple life and not have a scarcity mindset. I was like, but you guys don't understand. I have triggers and trauma elsewhere. Like
As
I
Janelle's
compare
starting
myself.
her own business right
Yeah,
now and made $4 last week.
exactly. And
Yeah,
and I'm lucky that
yeah,
I don't feel scarcity with this in the financial situation, but that doesn't mean I
yeah.
don't feel scarcity in other things.
Okay,
And so it's
okay,
but it's
I wanna
understanding
go back
context.
to this overblown. So, I was triggered by that neighbor.
Oh yeah.
Did I stop and center her? No, I didn't.
No.
I
I
centered
was even
myself.
triggered.
I centered my own emotions. I centered my own feelings. I didn't stop to say, how should I enter in? What is it
No,
that I
I
should
wait,
do?
I disagree with that. I
Yeah.
think we did. Here's the deal. I remember the first
I
phone
didn't
call.
blow it out of
You didn't blow it
proportion.
out for the first phone call. She called her twice and was very aggressive both times. And the first phone call, you did try to understand her position. I remember I sat there
Yeah.
and you tried to understand, like, tell me where this is coming from. What's happening? Where you got triggered is when she called me out, your daughter, for
Yeah.
using the parking space
Yeah.
too often and she wanted her daughter to use it.
Yeah.
So you got protective. So I would disagree with her. I actually think you did try
To
to
understand the
understand her
point
at
of it.
first.
Yeah. So, anyways, the point is, though, is I think what I gathered from in speaking with our listener, for example, who was curious about cultural differences in traumatizing. First of all, I think, yes, we need to get to know one another because every culture is going to respond differently based on learned patterns, learned behavior, cultural norms, who our family structures, um, right or wrong.
Yeah.
Right or wrong. We can look at our own selves, and if we're responding in ways that are harmful, we can make our own changes. We can't expect others to make changes. But what we can do is try to understand where the other person is coming
Yeah.
from. And I don't think we can eliminate whether we've been triggered. I
No.
think trigger is a
Yes.
natural reaction. Don't think something's wrong with you because you've been triggered. It's what you're going to do with that
Yes.
triggering is going to
That
work out.
that is
Don't avoid it,
no.
but don't avoid it. I mean, don't avoid the growth
Yeah.
because you can't
Well, also
triggering will
don't
happen.
avoid the triggering because
Yeah.
I think even if you try hard to avoid triggering, you're avoiding
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
essentially. Like I
Yeah.
think that's a really good call it is the triggering is going to be near impossible to avoid. It's how you handle being
Yeah.
triggered
Yeah.
and stuff. And yeah, and I've seen so many people in my lives who work to avoid any sort of triggering and I get it. It's painful, but like then you really do avoid
Yeah.
life. I mean, there's things.
And I do think that this is a bigger, especially as it relates to this podcast,
Yeah.
where this is a bigger subject, is we see our country wanting to pull back from understanding diversity,
Yes.
equity, inclusion. We see our country saying, wait, we don't want more stories here. And yet, many of us are traumatized.
Yeah.
This country is traumatized simply by the way that we founded ourselves and the trauma that we put onto other people. So, trauma is going to be part of our conversations. Triggering are going to be part of our life. How do we step into that? How do we embrace the discomfort of
Yeah.
that? And how do we learn from that so that we can all grow? So
Totally.
maybe the mindset is having a traveler's mindset
Yeah.
I'm
Oh, I
going to
love that.
I'm going to a different even though this is I'm staycationing,
Yes.
but how are the people different in my own area that I need to walk alongside?
No, I
So
love that because I think, again, when you think like political, to try not to get too political, but there's this TikTok trend going around for a while
everything is
around,
political. I have learned that.
well, everything is, but there's this TikTok trend going around for a while about all of these like, white men who voted for Trump and then are mad that liberal women won't even give them a chance because of who they voted for. And again, I think that's such an individualized perspective of those men aren't looking outside themselves of what those beliefs might signal to a
Yeah.
woman that it's
Yeah.
affected. And so I think it is interesting, like
Going beyond
yourself.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that you said be a traveler mindset.
Yeah.
It's yeah,
So
that's what it takes.
so this summer, if you have a staycation around,
Yeah.
be a traveler mindset with your family.
With your family,
Yeah.
Family reunions coming up.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
be a
yeah,
traveler
yeah.
mindset.
You're going to get triggered, and in that triggering, take a deep
Think of them
breath
as their
and
foreign
think
country.
about how they are handling their
Yeah,
trauma in a very different way. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I love that.
Wow. I don't know if that answered my our listeners' question, but I thought it was a really good question to bring up. That yes, we are all handling trauma and we handle it differently. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. We don't
No.
need to put an evaluation to it, but we do need to be curious and be open to what is going on with their trauma and why they're responding the way they are.
Yeah.
I want to make one little call out. It's summer in Seattle, which means in our studio, our windows are open. So we're going to have some kids playing in the background, some dogs barking, and all that stuff. So
we don't have air conditioning here.
Yeah, we don't have So bear with us, listeners.
We tried our best.
Okay.
Anyways, thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to have you here. We hope today's conversation sparked something in you, whether it's reflection, a new question, or a deeper commitment to showing up with empathy and accountability. If you found this episode meaningful, please subscribe, leave a review, and please like us. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can also connect with us on Instagram, YouTube, whitewomenwakeup.com, Substack, and TikTok, all at White Women Wake Up. We'd love to hear your thoughts and just keep the conversation going. So until next time, stay curious, be open, and keep waking up. Bye.
Okay. Yeah, I have. I love our YouTube.
Did you watch the bloopers?
No, I haven't seen any bloopers yet. Okay, I know. Do you look at all my Instagrams for my reading recs? The blogs?
I do, because I have to post
I know.
it on
Anyways.
Substack.